Hi, everybody. I'm Tyra Butler, licensed marriage and family therapist, and I'm here with Jill Johnson Young. Am I
Yes.
pronouncing that right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And she's a licensed marriage and family therapist, and she is the clinical director and CEO of Central Counseling Services in Riverside, California, and an office in Murrieta. Oh, my screen froze up. Can you
And
hear
I'm
me
all
okay?
I can. I'm an LCSW, by the
Oh,
way.
you're LCSW. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's all right.
Okay. And Jill is known in our community very well for her work and her extensive writing on grief and loss, doing presentations on dementia and on grief, and for just having a big heart. I've had the pleasure of meeting her and chatting, and it's always a pleasure. So I'm excited to chat with her here about her upcoming presentation. It's going to be March 22nd. Which is a Friday, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. at 1898 Business Center Drive, San Bernardino, California. It's at the Loma Linda Social Work Department. So if you are an IE Camp member, it's free. And if you are not, it's only $10. So I'm excited and eager to hear what she's presenting on, because the issues it's pervasive and it affects all of us personally, professionally. And, at some point in time, if you're a professional, LCSW, MFT, at some point you're going to work with clients that come in having either currently dealing with loss, right, or at some point in their life they will. And this is often a subject that a lot of people, I think, veer away from, don't want to talk about. It's not always the most pleasant subject. Is that fair to say, Jill?
I think for most people it feels like putting on an old shoe for me, but most people sort of shy away from it, and they, people die and it's part of our everyday life, but it's not part of our everyday discussions.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a universal experience. There's nobody on the planet who's going to not experience it. And the more prepared we are to be comfortable with it, the better we can receive our clients and support them, instead of pulling back and worrying about what to say, or alternatively jumping in too fast and saying the wrong thing, which will shut down a therapeutic relationship before it even gets started.
Yeah, that's so important. Not saying or saying the right thing, and not saying what could be off-putting or maybe even hurtful.
Very hurtful. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When I meet a client for the first time, even if they're a 5, if they're a little, one of the first things I ask after I have them tell me their story, because that's always first. Not intake paperwork, not any of the rest of it. Tell me what happened. Tell me who you lost. Tell me their names so I can use it. And then I make sure I write it down in a way that I never forget what name that was.
Mm-hmm.
And then I ask, what have you heard that really well-meaning people have said that hurt? And they all have a list. I've got probably a 5-page list in my head and on my computer of stuff people have been told. And it runs along some general themes. And they know folks are saying it to be nice. They know they're saying it because they don't know what else to say. But it really hurts.
Mm-hmm. And so that's some of what you're going to be covering in the
Yes.
presentation.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be covering that. I'll be covering what other therapists have heard that they might remember. I'm going to start out with what the dying process looks, sounds, smells like, so that folks who are there, first, if they're uncomfortable, they can step out. But it's important that we as therapists know what dying looks like, what people hear during that process, how dynamics work in families during that process, because that can be equally traumatizing for the client, even if it's a natural expected death.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the words that people use around dying, my least favorite one of all is death rattle, which isn't a thing, but it's a common term for an event that occurs that's a physiological thing, and it's natural and it's preventable and it doesn't hurt the dying person, but it can sound really off-putting to the person sitting bedside. And so when you're prepared for that and you hear someone say it, you can stop them and say, wait, let's talk about what that was really like, what that really was, let's use the real word for it, and let's stop blaming ourselves and thinking that we were hearing our loved one drown, because we weren't. We were hearing a perfectly natural part of the body shutting down. So we need to know those things. We need to know that the last time the oxygen is shut off, it really makes an impact on a family that have been listening to oxygen for 3 days or 3 weeks or 3 months or 3 years. That's been a
Mm-hmm.
sound in their house that's been part of them, and it's not anymore.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. That even the annoyances or the stress, the things that they had to deal with while their loved one
Mm-hmm.
is dying, that there's even a loss of those things.
Right. Everything changes. And you
Mm-hmm.
go from sitting bedside at the end to all of a sudden you don't need to, but your back hurts and you're tired. And then all that other stuff happens. You get calls from various folks, and there's family dynamics that occur. And maybe you weren't expecting, because the TV shows show that everyone gets along when somebody dies, and our clients watch TV. And they don't know that that's not how people usually get along, that they get along the way they've always gotten along. So
Mm.
if they were ever thinking about coming in for family conflict therapy, now they're going to need it, but it's going to be bigger because the conflict has just grown astronomically with the
Mm.
stress of a death.
Mm-hmm. And I would imagine they can get into crisis
Mhm.
situations, and yeah, it can get really complicated.
Somebody wants a funeral this way, somebody else wants the funeral that way. It's a
Mm-hmm.
sudden death, and somebody wants to step up and help, and so they take over doing everything. And the primary grievers get stepped all over, but aren't in a space to be able to say stop. There's all kinds of stuff that can happen that needs to be undone and worked through in a therapeutic, safe space where those who might have been part of the doing aren't there to listen to it. So only the person affected by it can talk it out and understand it and come to some solutions.
Mm. Okay. And can you tell us a little bit about your approach in when you work one-on-one with clients?
I am very solution focused. I'm a social worker. I like systems, and I look at the dying process because I did hospice for well over a decade. So I've sat through hundreds of deaths and worked with hundreds of families in that process and in the afterward, literally in their homes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see um, the death process, the dying process, the grief process as something that you should A, be afraid of, or B, stay stuck in. When I have a client come in and they say, oh, I've been to 6 groups and I've been grieving for 10 years and I've seen 3 therapists, the first thing I want to say, but I try really hard not to, is, oh my gosh, what happened? Who
Mm.
wasn't helping you? Because nobody should go through that kind of process for 10 years. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not an unusual statement for me to hear. They find me online because my stuff says grief, and they come to me and say, I'm so tired of grieving and I don't know how to get out of it. And what they find, and what I find with them and what they discover is they've been listening to everybody else helping them and telling them that grief is supposed to last forever, and that they're supposed to be sad, and they're supposed, if they're too happy or they start to take that person with them but not miss them every day, then they are being disrespectful, or they are getting over it too soon, or something. They're breaking the grief rules.
Mm-hmm.
And I want them to know that they can break the grief rules, because the grief rules don't make sense. And so we're going to figure out which grief rules they need to break and help them break them. And then we're going to go towards finishing the relationship, finishing the leftovers, finishing the prior deaths that have occurred and rolled into this one if they didn't work on those before, so
Mm-hmm.
that they can figure out what their relationship with their loved one needs to be as they move into a new life, so that they can figure out how they want to reorganize their life, because that's what has to happen if you're going to be a successful griever. You reorganize, you figure out where things fit again in a different way, and then you take that reorganized life and you take that person with you. And yes, you will miss them occasionally, but you are not going to be grieving forever. That's not healthy.
Mm-hmm.
People who grieve forever die.
Yeah, what do you think that's about? Right, yeah, the emotional and physical toll that would take to
Yeah,
grieve for that extended period of time.
Grief actually does have distinct physiological, it has physical impacts, it has cognitive impacts, it has emotional impacts, it can have spiritual impacts, and we're not prepared for that. So that's part of what a grief therapist needs to do, is educate the client that what you are feeling is perfectly normal, and we really got to work through it so you don't stay there. Because we know that those who don't work through it end up with some inflammatory processes, and those are the folks who don't survive. They get stressed out, they don't reorganize their finances, they don't reorganize who their friends are now and who their friends were before, because friends always change after a loss. They don't understand why they're fearful, which is a very common trait in someone grieving. And so they can address what the fears are so they can get past them and stop being fearful. They need to stop the guilt, because guilt is a huge part of grief. And that's usually because of input of other people. So we work through those things and solve the problems.
And what? I'm sorry, I was talking over you for a second.
And that's when we solve it.
Yeah, and I would imagine what you're talking about is that you see a lot of clients that get stuck. What you're talking about with the extended period of grieving, that they get stuck. And so your role is to, and you feel very passionate even in your writing and everything, to help people not stay stuck, to help mobilize them, to help them make plans for themselves, to help them kind of move ahead while still being able to hold on to their loved one and find ways that they can still hold on to the memory and the love.
And what that person left with them. There's a really great kids book called Badger's Parting Gifts. And in it, all the little forest animals identify the things that Badger left with them. And that's what we do when someone dies. We take the parts of them that are now part of us, and we keep them alive through us. And that's a normal, natural process. But we don't have to miss them every single day. We don't need to feel guilty if we're not crying every day. We shouldn't be. That's not healthy for us emotionally.
Okay. Yeah, that makes so much sense. That it's sad to see. It is. I've seen clients get kind of stuck, and even that word can sometimes be hard to say, because they're in a space of honoring, of deep emotion over the loss. And so I find it really is this careful balance of trying to help them process their memories and what happened and their feelings, along with a level of acceptance, to then shift into, okay, kind of not feeling as deeply sad, not feeling as
integrating the loss into their life.
Okay.
And integrating the loved one who died into the new life. Okay. And giving them permission to not feel sad, because a lot of what holds people back, at least in my experience with my clients and my online clients, is that when they start to look happy, they get shut down. Yeah, but you just lost them, or don't you miss them anymore, or aren't you still sad? And that gives them the input that they really shouldn't be experiencing sunshine and happy and taking the grandkids to Disney, or whatever it is that they want to do in this new life, knowing that their loved one will be happy for them, but they feel guilty because other people are watching them, and maybe they're doing it too fast or not enough, or they're smiling too much. On the other hand, the other thing they typically hear is, you're smiling too fast, but I don't want you to look sad because that makes me sad. There's all these conflicting messages that grievers get. And so I try to tease that out so they can look and see just how much conflict has been built up around them, and they don't know which way is out, because there isn't an out. So they have to make their own out, and they get to figure out their own rules, and they get to figure out who's supportive of them, and have those people be their new inner circle, so that they can use them to get out and create the new life and integrate.
Sounds very healthy.
I hope so.
Yeah.
My clients respond well.
Yeah. A healthy goal. Yeah. And so I'm so curious, Jill, if you could tell us, what is it that, I know you mentioned working in hospice, for an extensive period of time, 10 years or so?
About 10 years.
Can you tell us what personally led you into this niche
Well, hospice is just something I love doing. I started doing it in Florida a very long time ago,
Mhm.
when I was actually still doing my MSW, and then stuck with it. There's not very many people who do hospice, but those of us who do we're hospice through and through. And for us, death and dying is just part of life, and it's a sacred moment to be able to be there with a family, to walk them through from illness to death and back out again.
Mhm.
I've cooked pancakes for families while we waited for mortuaries to come and pick up loved ones. That's part of who you are when you do that work.
Mhm.
And so that part of me really thrives in doing grief work because I know that there is another side, and I know that they're going to get there if we do it right. I've also been widowed twice myself, so death and dying is not new to me. And I grew up in a family that death was part of life. We had a lot of people in our family who were dying as I was growing up, just because I had older family members, a lot of them. And for us, it was normal. We went to visitations, we went to services, we went outside and played tag afterward. That was how I was raised, and that's how I think death should be handled. It's just part of who we are.
Hmm. So you had a lot more people in your life growing up die than
The average bear, probably.
average person?
Yes, I was the one with the oldest parents in class.
Okay.
So yeah, grandmothers when I was an early teen, and aunts and uncles or great aunts and uncles and that sort of thing. That was just part of my growing up.
Mm.
And it was never treated as anything abnormal or scary. We were expected to be there when someone was dying. We were supported in doing so. There wasn't a lot of talk of ghosts and bad things. It was just part of life.
Hmm. Yeah, so I can see how you develop this sort of normal, it's like a normal part of life and almost like a level of comfortability with it.
It used to be that way until we started making hospitals. People died at home.
Mm-hmm.
And so people were familiar with people dying at home, and wakes were held at home, and funerals were held in local churches, and everybody got together and they built the casket together, and then the casket was made by a furniture manufacturer, and things started shifting. But still in all, we used to all treat death like it was part of everyday life.
Mm-hmm.
And then we stopped.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of fear of death that I
Mm-hmm.
see in a lot of people.
Yeah, we used to have specific clothing we wore. There was, for the first year you wore this, the second year you wore that. Your door had certain kinds of colors hung on it. After so many months, the colors changed. There were lockets people wore that indicated they were grieving, and ribbons on their shirt sleeves that indicated they were grieving, so that people could talk about it and acknowledge that there was a loss, and that was just life.
Mm-hmm.
We've made it very sanitary and very scary, and it doesn't need to be.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that you have this personal experience, that you lend to what led you into this work. And
Yeah.
and your level of, I can see, your level of expertise in everything, this just lifetime of experiences, both personally growing up and then professionally, later getting your degree and
Mhm.
everything, and then professional experience in hospice. So,
Yeah. When I'm working with a client and they want to talk about what happened while someone was dying and what scared them, probably 90% of the time I've seen a death similar to that. Everybody's death is different. Everybody's experience is different. And I'm going to be the last person in the world to say, oh, I understand or I know, because I don't. I wasn't sitting on the other side at that point where the client was.
mm-hmm,
But I have a better conceptualization of what was occurring, and I can usually figure out what they were talking about and help them understand what was really happening medically,
mm,
and so that they can understand the process and what they were seeing, what they were hearing, and also help them accept that they did the very best they could,
mm-hmm,
and they were only human, and the decisions they made were the best decisions they could make under the circumstances with the information they had in that moment, and that's the very best, and that's all that loved one could have asked for them.
mm.
And that's important. They need to hear that.
Yeah, that is. And when I'm listening to you, Jill, I just hear such a groundedness in you that I think is so attractive. And I can imagine that your clients really benefit from that a lot. That,
They do. And we laugh a lot too, because when you are working with grieving folks, if you laugh, they laugh, and it gives them permission to laugh again.
Oh, yeah. Right. To have that moment
Mhm,
of brevity and
mhm.
yeah, that not everything is so painful and awful, that we can smile and laugh too, and it's okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. Well, um, thank you so much, Jill, for meeting with me and chatting. I'm so excited to see your presentation, and I'm hoping that you guys join us. If you are interested in how to understand grief better and how to help your clients know what to say, know what not to say, and just have a broader understanding of the whole process that people go through and different experiences that clients can go through, and how you can feel and be better equipped in working with them. So this will expand your clinical skills, and you'll feel a little more equipped and capable of handling those sticky situations and things that might be kind of difficult for you, if you didn't have this information and have the benefit of her expertise. So I'm excited to learn from her too. So
Great. And I will see you a week from tomorrow.
yes, so March 22nd, IE camped, 1898 Business Center Drive, San Bernardino, California, in the Loma Linda University Social Work Building. And it's free for IE camped members, $10 if you're not a member. So come join us. It's going to be fun and informative.
See you then.
Okay. Thank
Bye-bye.
you, Jill. Bye.